What's the most expensive impression on the internet? It's not a Super Bowl ad. It's not a homepage banner on the Wall Street Journal. It's the one your biggest customer sees before they decide whether to take your call. I work with a CRO at a consumer products company. He built the North American market from zero to over $200 million in under 5 years. And 3 of the biggest retailer partners in the world, we're talking top 3 US retailers, regularly reference his LinkedIn posts in B2B sales conversations. Not his press releases, not his company's marketing materials, his LinkedIn posts. That's what this episode is about. Not theory, not 10 LinkedIn hacks, 4 real case studies from investor-backed companies where CEO visibility directly drove exits, recruiting, IPOs, and revenue. The data is specific, the pattern is repeatable, and the conclusion is hard to argue with. Today I want to do something I don't normally do. I want to let the data talk. I recently presented to a room full of PE and VC operating partners, people who manage billions in assets, people who have playbooks for everything, pricing, go-to-market, talent acquisition, operations. But when I asked how many had a playbook for CEO visibility, the room went quiet. And look, I get the skepticism. When someone like me says CEO visibility matters, of course I'd say that. I run a company that helps CEOs show up on LinkedIn. I have skin in the game. So I'm not going to ask you to take my word for it. I'm going to walk you through 4 case studies, 4 investor-backed leaders across 4 different industries, real data, real before and after numbers, and I'll let you draw your own conclusions. But first, let me set the stage. Here's the exercise I'd encourage you to do this week. Pick any CEO in your portfolio, or honestly try it on yourself, and do 4 things. Number 1, Google them. What comes up? Is there a narrative, or is it just a LinkedIn profile and maybe an old press release? 2, ask ChatGPT about them. What does it say? Probably nothing. And that's becoming a problem fast because buyers, candidates, and journalists are increasingly using AI to research people before meetings. 3, check their LinkedIn. When was their last post? Was it original thought or reshared press release? Four, look at conferences and media. Are they speaking, being quoted, or are competitors with half the expertise getting all the coverage? And here's the thing I want you to sit with. The absence isn't neutral, it's a drag. When a candidate researches your leadership team and finds nothing, that's not 0, that's negative. When a potential acquirer looks up your CEO and sees tumbleweeds, that creates doubt. When your CRO has no digital presence and a competitor's CRO is everywhere, your sales team is starting every conversation at a disadvantage. And this just isn't about CEOs anymore. Your CRO, your CMO, your COO, they're all being evaluated before the first conversation happens. Most companies have 0 strategy for any of them. Before I get into the case studies, let me share something from our data across 350 plus executives, because there's a pattern in what doesn't work that matters as much as what does. Mistake number 1, resharing isn't visibility. Reposting your company's press release is not building a voice. Original perspective is the only currency that compounds. Mistake number 2, so humbled to be featured is not a strategy. Company promotion alone, the press releases, the product launches, the we're hiring posts, that's the lowest performing content category every time. Across every executive we've studied, what actually works is shaping the industry out loud. Leaders creating categories can't do it behind the scenes. Educating the market, defining the narrative, that has to happen in public. Okay, let's get to the case studies. First case study, I call this one the exit. It's a PE-backed healthcare software company CEO. They've got 850 employees. They're backed by 2 PE firms with over 105 billion in combined assets under management. Harvard MBA, deep domain expertise, brought in by the sponsors specifically to scale the company, and virtually no digital presence. 5 posts in 8 months. That was the baseline. 72 average likes. No consistent narrative, no recognizable voice in the market. If you Googled him, you'd find a LinkedIn profile and maybe a company bio. That's it. Now, this is the most common scenario I see. Brilliant operator, deep expertise, zero digital footprint. The question isn't whether the CEO is good. The question is whether anyone outside the building knows it. Here's what changed. Over 18 months, this CEO went from 5 posts a year to 20 posts a month. That's 240 posts a year. His top posts were pulling 400 plus likes. He went from invisible to a recognized voice in healthcare IT. And then the exit happened. They were acquired by a Fortune 500 company for over $2 billion. Now, did LinkedIn cause the acquisition? Of course not. The product was strong, the team was strong, the PE sponsors did their job. But here's what I want you to think about. When that acquisition was announced, it reached his entire industry because 2 years of consistent publishing had built the audience first. The announcement didn't create the audience was waiting for the announcement. And that's the key insight from this case study. Visibility isn't built at the moment of exit. It's built in the 24 months before anyone knows an exit is coming. You can't turn it on when you need it. The runway has to be laid first. Second case study, the recruiter. Chief clinical officer at a PE-backed national healthcare services company. 3,000 employees, backed by a top-tier firm and a $400 million plus buyout. The challenge wasn't revenue, the challenge was talent. This company operates in a therapeutic environment, and there is a nationwide shortage of qualified clinicians. Traditional recruiting channels were failing. More job postings weren't the answer. So they tried something different. They made the leader visible. The numbers. Posting frequency went up 619% from about 2 posts a month to 12 posts a month over a 47-month program. Their average engagement more than doubled, 539 total original posts. And here's the outcome that matters. Headcount grew 26% from about 2,300 employees to nearly 3,000 during an industry-wide talent crisis. But the data that really changed my thinking was the content breakdown. We analyzed every post by category, and the results were clear. The most liked posts weren't "we're hiring" or "great company." They were personal leadership stories. The most strategically valuable posts were team spotlights, recruiting ads that don't look like recruiting ads. And company promotion, it was 37% of all posts, but the lowest performing category. Personal and leadership content drove twice the engagement. Let me say that again. Company promotion, the thing most CEOs default to, performed the worst. Personal leadership stories performed best. LinkedIn became this company's best recruiting billboard, and the executive didn't have to ask anyone to apply. Third case study. This one's different, and it's my favorite. Founder and CEO of a cybersecurity company, 5,000 employees, eventually took the company public at nearly $6 billion in valuation. But here's why this one is interesting. This CEO was already active on LinkedIn, 18 posts a month. That's way more than most executives. So the challenge wasn't getting him to post. The challenge was getting him to be human. When we looked at his content, 52% was industry commentary. Safe, professional, forgettable. He was a commentator, not a leader. He was telling people what was happening in cybersecurity. He wasn't telling them who he was. So the shift was strategic. We moved from pure industry commentary to a balanced content mix across 4 pillars, and the results were dramatic. He actually posted slightly less, went from 18 posts a month to 14 true originals, but impressions went up 71%. Engagement rate went up 52%. He was doing less and getting dramatically more. And here's the killer data point. Personal content, stories about his journey, his values, his life outside of work, drove 2.5 times the reach of industry content. 2.5 times. Think about that. The safe, professional industry commentary that most CEOs default to, it establishes credibility, but it doesn't build reach. It doesn't build an audience. The personal stories are what multiply everything. And this CEO took the company public, $6.6 billion IPO. He'd been building his public reputation for years before the roadshow. When institutional investors evaluated the company, they already knew who he was. That's the compound effect of visibility. Last case study, number 4, the closer. And I saved it for last because it has the most visceral proof point. CRO at a consumer products company, PE-backed, built the North American market from zero to over 200 million in 5 years. Before working with us, 5 posts a year for a decade, sporadic, unfocused, no strategy. A leader with massive commercial impact and almost no digital footprint. After 7 posts a month, 18 times the posting frequency. Average likes went from 36 to 174. That's 5 times the growth of engagement. But the engagement that matters isn't the likes. It's what happened in the sales conversations. 3 of the biggest retail partners in the world, top 3 US retailers, regularly reference his LinkedIn posts in B2B sales conversations. Let me unpack why that matters. The most expensive impression on the internet isn't the one that goes viral. It's the one a buyer at a top 3 retailer sees before a meeting and uses that to decide whether they trust this person as a long-term partner. That's not a vanity metric. That's enterprise revenue. That's relationships worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And when I looked at his top performing posts, same pattern as the other case studies. The highest performing content wasn't product promotion. It was milestone storytelling that made buyers and partners feel like they were part of the journey. Flagship retail launches, industry awards, thanking partners by name. The engagement compounded year over year. Even as posting volume stabilized in 2025 and 2026, engagement kept climbing. Each post lands harder as credibility accumulates. That's the flywheel. Okay, 4 case studies. Let me pull the thread. 4 different industries: healthcare software, healthcare services, cybersecurity, consumer products. 4 different roles: 2 CEOs, a chief clinical officer, and a CRO. 4 different outcomes: a $2 billion exit, 26% headcount growth, a $6 billion IPO, and top 3 retailers referencing LinkedIn posts in sales meetings. And the same pattern every time. Start publishing consistently, shift the content mix towards personal and leadership stories, compound over 2 to 4 years. That's it. That's the framework. Let me break down the content framework because the data made this impossible to ignore. Pillar number 1, industry thought leadership. This is your credibility base. It establishes expertise and positions you as a category authority. It's necessary, but across every executive we studied, it was never the highest performing category. It's table stakes, not the differentiator. Pillar number 2, leadership and career journey. This is the trust builder, vulnerability, growth stories, lessons from failures. These outperform polished content every single time. This is where people start to feel like they know you. Pillar number 3, company promotion. Team spotlights, wins, milestones. I call these recruiting ads that don't look like recruiting ads. They're important for volume, but they're the lowest performing category when you look at engagement. And they're what most CEOs default to. Pillar number 4, work adjacent, personal. Your values, your family, causes you care about. Personal content drives 2.5 times the reach of industry content. It's the multiplier that makes everything else work. Now, the key insight is that you need all 4 pillars working together. Personal content is the reach multiplier, Industry content is the credibility base. Leadership stories build trust. Company promotion provides the volume. The mix matters enormously. And what most CEOs get wrong is they over-index on company promotion and industry commentary, the two lowest performing categories, and completely skip the personal and leadership stories that actually build audiences. The last thing I want to address, and this one is personal, every CEO who quits too early. All 4 case studies show the same hockey stick. Months 1 through 3 feel like nothing is happening. Likes are low, reach is limited, you're publishing into the void and wondering why you're doing this. Months 4 through 6, you start hearing, I saw your post. Inbound starts to trickle, the algorithm begins to recognize consistency. Months 6 through 12, it accelerates. Recruiting shifts, the narrative changes, the audience starts to build on itself. Year 2 and beyond, compounding. The flywheel is spinning. Every post lands harder. The audience was built before the moment that they needed it. And that's the brutal truth about visibility. You can't build it when you need it. The exit case study proves this most powerfully. You can't build an audience at the moment of exit. The audience need to be built 24 months before exit. So if you're 3 months in and thinking this isn't working, you're right where everyone else was. The ones who won are the ones who kept going. Let me land the plane. CEO visibility isn't a marketing expense. It's a value creation lever. It sits alongside pricing, go-to-market, talent, and operations as something that compounds over time and drives a measurable business outcome. The 4 case studies prove it. A $2 billion exit, 26% headcount growth during a talent crisis, a $6 billion IPO, top 3 retailers referencing LinkedIn posts in sales meetings. Same framework, 4 different industries, all repeatable. So here's what I encourage you to do this week. Pick one leader in your organization, Google them, ask ChatGPT about them, check their LinkedIn, and ask yourself if an acquirer, a candidate, or a reporter looked up this person, what would they find? If the answer is not much, that's the visibility gap, and now you know what to do about it. Thanks for listening. I'm Justin Asiri, and this is Cultivating Executive Presence.